So let's get back to psychodynamic psychology. Freud is recognized. Sigmund Freud is often seen, and rightly so, as the father of psychoanalysis. He's also remembered as one of the foremost pioneers in the study of mental or psychological health. So what was so great about Sigmund Freud? Well, to begin with, Freud took chances. During Freud's life, mental illness was often seen as a neurological problem. You remember, like with Charcot, the neurologist, your abnormal, aberrant behavior is caused by some malfunction in your brain. It's a neurological problem, a brain problem. So, some kind of damage to the brain or the nervous system, in which case you might treat the patient by removing part of the brain or using high-dose electric shock to, in a weird way, reset the brain, which instead typically harmed the patient and caused memory loss, if not worse. Or it wasn't really an illness at all. It was a spiritual malady, a demonic possession, maybe a punishment of some sort from God. Your strange behavior might mean that there's some demon inside of you, controlling you, making you do all those terrible things against yourself or against others. So, we need to get that demon out of you, scare it out, or shock it out. Stoning. There was a time, back in ancient Rome, for example, when you might throw stones at a patient to try to frighten the angry spirit away, with fairly predictable results, right? I mean, is throwing stones at someone with strange behavior going to scare them straight? Get that old angry demon out of there. Probably not, right? Although there's a good chance you'll hurt or even kill the patient. But Freud rejected demonic possession, untreatable neurological disorders, locking patients away in an asylum like prisons for the mentally ill. In other words, keep them locked up, keep us safe. Us, the supposedly healthy population, but keep those sick people away from us because there's no hope for them. Freud had hope. However peculiar you might find his theories, Freud had hope for the mentally ill. One so-called treatment after another he rejected. But to come up with his own, to invent his own approach to treating the mentally ill, Freud had to first understand the mind, which meant, to comprehend the mind of the patient. He needed to develop a model of the mind itself, to understand what it is composed of and how it develops over time. So, what did Freud's model of the human mind look like? Well, after years of research, Freud concluded the mind is in fact composed of several elements, each of which arises at a certain time in life and in response to a particular need. The first part of the mind, the id, stems from the birth of the individual. The role of the id, this most primitive aspect of the mind, is quite simple: to satisfy the instinctual desires of the individual. The two most important instinctual desires that, in Freud's view, motivated human behavior are the sexual instinct, which he called the eros, and the death instinct, which Freud called thanatos. However, this id is clearly not enough for you to survive and thrive in this real world around us. The real world, this complex world of rules and laws and expectations, is a world that we must interact with and steer our way through, avoiding dangers and accomplishing necessary tasks to maintain our survival. And to do this, to keep us safe in the real world, the mind develops a second component, the ego. Maneuvering through society, forming relationships, finding and keeping a job, all of this and more require a great deal of effort and thought, of rational thinking, not primitive instinctual impulse. The energy for these tasks actually comes from the instincts, Freud says. I mean, the energy used to learn English or clean your house or whatever is essentially redirected instinctual energy, redirected by the ego. You see, rather than allow the id to satisfy these instincts directly through something like sex or whatever, the ego uses this energy to perform more productive tasks, like work and study and maintaining interpersonal relationships. When the id seeks to perform an act for the sake of these instincts, the ego judges whether it should allow this to happen. Should the id be allowed to do what it wants? That's up to the ego to decide. And the ego has basically three choices to select from in dealing with the id and its efforts to satisfy the instincts. So first, the ego may allow this satisfaction to take place. You know, go ahead. Id, do it. Do what you want. This is most likely to occur if the ego judges that fulfilling this particular instinct at this time and in this place and manner will pose no threat to the individual. But what if there is a threat or a problem with the time and place? In that case, the ego might choose the second option. Let's hold off for that for now, id. Let's postpone the behavior you want until it's safe or appropriate to do so. And by postponing that action, the ego can now use that instinctual energy instead for other tasks. Postponing is not really saying no to the id. The ego is just saying, yes, you can do this, but not now and perhaps not here. Let's say, for example, that you're sitting at home, relaxing, watching a football game on TV, and you feel this desire to have a drink. And you know there's some beer in the fridge, and the id says, get up, go ahead, get yourself a beer and drink it. Chances are your ego will accept this impulse. After all, you're at home, relaxing, nothing particularly threatening about one beer, right? However, if you're at the store and you're walking by the drinks in the store, you see a bottle of beer, and again the id says, grab it, open it, and drink it. This time, what the ego is likely to say, no way. Remember, the ego's job is to understand the real world, including all its rules and risks, and to keep you alive and safe in that world. And knowing the rules as it does, knowing that you couldn't get into trouble for doing this, the ego says to the id, no, you can't do that. You're in a store. You just can't pop open a bottle of beer and drink it, not unless you want to end up in jail. So, does the id care about jail? Of course not. It only cares about satisfying instincts. In this case, the ego has to overrule the id and postpone the desire. Maybe the ego says, you can have a beer, but not here and not now. Take it to the cash register, pay for it, take it home, and drink it there. That would be following the rules. So, you see why the id and the ego don't necessarily get along very well. And this struggle is where our anxiety and behavioral problems can come from this mental conflict.